Big news. So today, Hearthstone has announced that they are going to go with a new game format. This is a big game changer. It's called Standard. So, for those of you who have played card games in the past, you'll know what Standard is fairly well, but a lot of people have started Hearthstone as their first ever card game. I myself have a background in Magic. I have like a vague understanding of a lot of the card formats out there, including Pokemon, which rotates in Standard. Legends of the Five Rings has Standard. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a notable exception, which tries to fix the rotating nature or the stagnant nature of a format by massively power creeping every time and then banning a lot of cards, which is kind of pseudo-rotating. But the point is, a lot of card games out there do it, and Hearthstone is doing it now because they finally have enough cards that new players will find it a little bit difficult to get in if they have to buy everything, and it keeps things fresh. Anyways, what is Standard? What is Hearthstone doing? That's what I will be covering in this first part, and if you're looking for impacts, implications, that will be covered later. So first of all, let's take a look at their actual official post and see what happens. What is going on? First of all, there is this video over here. If you go to the Battle.net page, Hearthstone, find a new way to play, or you can just search up Designer Insights with Ben Brode, a new way to play. Link will be included at the bottom of this video. Ben Brode talks a bit about what in the world is Standard, and that's a good introduction as well. And I will talk about what is Standard as well. But let's just read this stuff first. So Standard is going to be a format where you're using a pool of cards that were released in the current and previous calendar year. That means the card pool is limited in terms of what can be played. That has a few benefits. A more dynamic and balanced metagame. If you stay tuned for when I analyze how every single deck that has been kind of popular at one point and what they lose and the things that you're going to need in order to make that deck work again, you're going to find that it is a really interesting puzzle for deck builders. One of the things I love about collectible card games is that you're able to showcase your own creativity through the decks that you play. If cards constantly stay in the format, if there isn't this Standard thing, then what happens is you usually have, currently there's about 15, 20 competitive decks. With each new expansion, you just look at those 15 to 20 decks and you think, okay, so I have my general game plan. What new cards in this expansion can I just put into this old deck? Now, the League of Explorers happened to introduce a few new concepts, notably with the card Reno Jackson. That created a lot of different archetypes as well, but for the most part, that's rare, and it was mainly just take the cool new cards and put them into the old cards, old decks. But now, if you're rotating out sets as well, that means you can't just do that, and that's really good. In some strange way, having a lesser amount of selection allows for more creativity. When Warsong Commander was nerfed from Grim Patron was kind of running all over the place. You nerfed that one card, and everything changed. So many things changed. The number of good decks, what was good, changed. Handlock, for example, used to be really good because there was a lot of Patron. Handlock became bad because other decks came up. Turns out that Patron is still good, but that's a complete aside. The point is, the removal of cards allows deck builders to showcase their skills, often way more than the introduction of cards. Because when cards are introduced, you just put the good cards into existing decks. But when cards are removed, then some decks can no longer be run, and then you have to come up with new ideas. So each card has more impact, because there were, for example, a few cool cards released in the Grand Tournament, and cards such as Sneed's Old Shredder, which is getting rotated, but suppose there were a lesser card pool and Sneed's Old Shredder came out, it would be like, bam, this is the big card that I need in my deck. Now that Dr. Boom is gone, suppose Sneed's Old Shredder were to be released as a new card, then be like, oh, well, I want a good card that's big. Maybe I'll toss in Sneed's Old Shredder. Because Sneed's Old Shredder, he's cool. And inside him is a cool guy. Bonus points if you get that reference. Developers have more freedom designing exciting new cards, so Warsong Commander was changed. Because it painted them in a corner, they could no longer make a lot of different cards. Mad Scientist paints them in a little bit of a corner. They can't make secrets that are that good. But now that Mad Scientist is gone, perhaps secrets can be made significantly more powerful. And newer players jump in faster without having to collect as many cards, I think, is a really big reason. Now, with the limited more amount of sets, you can get into the game and be more competitive because you're going to be coming up not against all of the entire game's powerful cards, but just against like the latest 2 years of sets. For those of you who did get Nax Ramus or Goblins vs. Gnomes, and you're like, oh no, I can no longer use my cards. I'm so sad. Well, one, Blizzard is allowing you to disenchant your old Nax Ramus cards, so it turns out that your $20 adventure, roughly, can get disenchanted to 3,200 dust, because it comes with quite a few legendaries, 5 legendaries, and a handful of epics, rares, etc., which turns out to be a pretty good deal still. There's also this format now, which uses the entirety of all Hearthstone cards called Wild. Though it seems like Blizzard is going to, and in my opinion rightfully so, support this new format, the mainly point, the Standard. And this is more important for competitive players. You can still do Standard or Wild ranked, and you can still get Legend in Wild, but Standard is probably, I predict, going to be the format that is mainly played in tournaments. In addition, all of Blizzard's tournaments, according to the info that they present, will be under the Standard format moving forward. More importantly is the Hearthstone team has a interesting vision for Standard, a little bit of a unique one. So, for those who have played Magic before, I'll make this analogy. Magic the Gathering, for a while, had something called a base set. In most of the Standard formats, there would just be this set of solid cards, which would represent what each faction, what color wanted to do, and it always just stayed true to the color. And yes, there were expansions, but there would just always be this base set of basic cards. So Hearthstone's doing the same thing, with the notable problem that some decks currently use a lot of cards still from the basic and core set. That is perhaps my main concern with this. So what Hearthstone is doing is Standard will be the last 2 years of sets plus the core and basic set. Of course, that's going to mean it won't be a very good format if a lot of the decks continue to just use basic and core sets. That is a very valid concern, and Blizzard is kind of trying to take this middle ground of always looking for a chance to look into the basic and classic card sets and adjust them so that they aren't too dominant in the sets. So it looks like moving forward there'll always be iconic cards like Fireball and Frostbolt and cards like Swipe and, backstabbing, eviscerating, cards that just really remind people who are coming from World of Warcraft, oh, Hearthstone is based off of World of Warcraft. And they'll just be around to serve as a good foundation. But the key is going to be to make sure that the foundation does not overpower the expansions. One of the most notable decks that uses a lot of basic and classic card sets, and Ben Brode revealed this in an interview as well, so they're aware of it, is Druid. Druid has been a class that's been really stable off of the core and basic sets. Between Savage, Roar, Force of Nature, Innervate, Swipe, I'm sure one of those cards, if not more, will have some long considered adjustments. You perhaps need to change fewer than you would expect, because people are like, oh my gosh, Force of Nature, Savage Roar, that always exists, but Force of Nature is not that great by itself, and Savage Roar is arguably pretty good by itself, but not nearly as good if it's not with Force Savage for that. There are more deck slots. People have been asking for this for a while. Blizzard's using the excuse of having a walled format to double the deck slots. There are now 18 slots. Wow. In case it wasn't clear enough already, Standard is going to include the current year's set as well as last year's set, as well as the Basic and Classic set. When Spring 2016 comes out, it is going to cause the smallest Standard set possible, because it'll be the start of a new year, it'll be the start of a new Standard, the first Standard, and there will only be the Spring 2016 expansion, League of Explorers, the Grand Tournament, Blackrock Mountain, so just those 4 sets plus the Classic and Basic cards. And that's going to cause a lot of upheaval because Curse of Naxxramas and Goblins vs. Gnomes included several very strong and powerful cards which will no longer be playable in Standard. It's going to be called the Year of the Kraken, the first Standard format, in order to become more memorable so that they don't just call it Standard Year 1. So, unleash the Kraken, boys. So those were the broad facts. For those of you who want to look at the smaller details, you can look into the FAQ of the blog post, the massive blog post that they made, and included are some of the finer details such as what happens when you're playing Arena. Arena is going to have all the cards. What happens when you have a Discover happen in the new Standard format? You can only discover from the current format, which would be Standard, so you cannot find, if you're trying to discover a minion, you can't find Sludge Belcher when the new expansion comes out.